Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Bonds and Stories, we retell those moments honest every day, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The freight elevator shuddered like an old lung and sighed me onto the 4th floor. My loft still smelled like fresh polyurethane and the stubborn sweetness of roasted beans I carried home on my sleeve. Outside the warehouse windows, the Menominee ran slate and slow. Inside the brick was raw, the ductwork honest, the lights warm enough to pretend this was easy. I'd stacked white pizza boxes on the butcher block island and lined up 4 water glasses like witnesses. The new keys sat in a ceramic dish by the door, 2 silver, 1 brass, all mine. I told myself to breathe. Milwaukee does that to you. A deep breath, a straight spine, a polite smile with a steel core. The knock arrived on the minute. Lorraine, in a quilted jacket, the color of hospital light, swept in with a candle and a critique. Charles followed in that cordial Midwestern way that makes a boundary sound like a suggestion. Tessa came last, a cloud of perfume and certainty, her phone already up to catch angles. "Look at this space," Lorraine said as if she were touring a listing. "For one person, it's generous." "It echoes," Tessa added. "You hear it." "Echoes mean empty. It means honest construction," Charles said, running his palm over the exposed column like he'd paid for it. I handed out plates and made a show of folding the cardboard lids. The island light hummed. Down the hall, someone rolled a cart. Normal sounds ordinary evening. I'd chosen ordinary on purpose. "Still can't believe you chose the riverside," Lorraine said, sliding the candle onto my counter without asking. "It's drafty near water. You know it isn't drafty paperwork handled right the first time." I did not look at the manila folder under my cutting board, the one with printed screenshots from our family's shared Google Drive Tessa Relocation Plan 2.0, and a pre-filled e-signature draft with my address in the transfer field. I'd found them 3 nights ago, hidden in a folder called Housekeeping. Like this loft was a countertop to wipe clean. "Tessa's lease is up." Lorraine went on, slicing into a pizza nobody had agreed to yet. "The city won't be kind in winter. We had an idea, light touch all above board. For a few months, just put her on your lease. 6 months tops. It will make her financing smoother when the right place appears. Family first." Charles nodded. "Just paperwork, Maya. Nothing changes. You'll still live here. We're practical people." Tessa framed the brick wall with her phone. "Honestly, it's silly to keep this much square footage to yourself. You're not a stuff person. I am. I curate." I set a glass at each place and kept my face polite. The glass rims caught the light like sober halos. "You drove over in under 20 minutes, I said. "Traffic can't be that cruel." Lorraine pressed her lips together. "Traffic isn't the point. The point is, we're thinking of you. You insisted on doing everything alone. There's an easier way, and it starts with you letting us help." "Help," Tessa echoed like a password. I slid a slice to each plate. The pizza was hot and ordinary. Grease bled into the cardboard. When I reached for napkins, the iPad on the end of the island brightened to life. "Mr. Reed." The sound was off, the camera on. He lifted a glass to the lens from whatever tidy apartment he occupied 3 miles away. "Is that your lawyer?" Lorraine said, her smile going porcelain. "For dinner." "He FaceTimes friends," I said. "He's not the worst at toasts." Charles chuckled, trying to generous away the discomfort. "Well then, cheers to new chapters and good choices." His eyes fell to the keys in the dish, small moons under a lamp. "You've come a long way from that coffee cart." "Cart to roastery to loft," I said. "Long way, steady way." Tessa's phone pinged. She didn't hide the grin. "Mom, show her the spreadsheet." Lorraine reached for her tote and produced a printed budget already creased with decisions. "We ran numbers so you don't have to." If Tessa is added as an occupant, her credit history piggybacks a touch. Nothing major, just optics, and it shows stability. Lenders love stability. You know that. "I do." I collected the water glasses and topped them off. I also know what the building manager loves. As if summoned by timing and Midwestern luck, there came another knock softer, then the door cracked. "Kovach," the man said, tall gray at the temples, blue polo with the building's name stitched over the heart. Welcome basket ran late. Traffic on canal. He held out a mesh bag, a pothos, a packet about trash chutes, a magnet with emergency numbers. "You picked a good unit," he added, glancing at the beams. And just a reminder, any change in occupancy needs management approval and updated insurance. It's in the welcome packet. Sorry to drop rules with snacks. No, it's great, I said. Thank you. Lorraine's smile tightened a notch. Charles thanked the man, honest and brisk, while Tessa drifted back to the window and took a shot of herself with the river, as if the water had flown in to compliment her. Once the door clicked shut, Lorraine breathed through her nose. We're not talking about forever, she said. 6 months. Less if the right place appears. It's how families handle things quietly. You know Milwaukee. You know people talk. I know, I said. They do. The iPad glowed again. Mr. Reed made a small circle with his glass and mouthed something like, "Pace yourself." I left him on mute. The candle Lorraine had brought had a name meant to sound expensive laundry day. It smelled like effort scrubbed off a life. We've always been fair with opportunities, Charles said, spooning sauce onto his plate, like he needed something to do with his hands. You got grit. Tessa has vision. This just meets in the middle. Vision, Tessa said, pleased with the noun. And storage needs. I slid the manila folder a fraction out from under the cutting board to feel its edge against my skin. The paper had weight. The screenshots were time-stamped first draft 3 weeks ago, last revision yesterday, right down to the line that read, "Request recipient to confirm transfer within 24 hours." The word transfer didn't mean caretaking. It meant possession. I appreciate you all coming, I said, because I was raised to say so. The boxes aren't even broken down yet. There's a hum I haven't learned to name. It's good to have voices in here. Lorraine softened at the sound of manners. We want what's best, she said, and almost made me believe it. What's best, Tessa said, is not making this harder than it needs to be. A train horn stitched through the windows low and brief. The loft felt larger when everyone was quiet. I folded a napkin once then again into a sharp white rectangle. The building settled. The river kept moving. The lights were warm and honest. I could taste the day's roast at the back of my tongue, dark and clean. Let's eat, I said. We did. The pizza folded like warm paper in the hand. We ate knives, mostly for show. Grease made constellations on the cardboard. The candle insisted my counter smelled like clean laundry when it didn't. Tessa narrated bites to her phone screen, as if the brick wall had hired her. Charles asked polite questions about ventilation and square footage, the language of men who like to sound like custodians without having to hold a mop. Lorraine dabbed at nothing with a napkin and looked at the island like it owed her a presentation. You really did all this from coffee, she said, which landed like a compliment wrapped around a doubt. From work, I said. Coffee was the tool. I learned the weight of a shift before I learned what artisan meant. When the rest of junior year went to sleep, I was stacking cups in the back of a Sonic off Highway 100, the floor a permanent film, the fryer singing its small, angry hymn. I biked home at 1:12 a.m., garlic salt under my nails. In the morning, my mother pressed a hand to my forehead and said I looked resilient the way some people say exhausted without wanting to admit it. Tessa packed for a summer program in Aspen and asked if I'd seen her left point shoe. Everything had a cost. Only some of it posted to the account you could read. Milwaukee winters tell the truth. The year I bought the stainless cart and a used generator, the wind cut across the Menominee and whistled straight through wool. I parked by the commuter lot before dawn when the river was dark pewter and the sky a lid. My first regular wore a Union jacket and didn't talk until the second week. When he finally did, he said, "That's a clean pour like a handshake." I learned which gloves could pour without shivering the wrists. I learned the pitch of a generator trying to die, and the exact way to kick the panel so it didn't. I did the paperwork because nobody else would food license with a city that smelled like toner and winter inspection day with a man who tested temperatures the way some people test faith. I kept a cash box that rattled, then a bank account that didn't, then a spreadsheet with lines that became a life. When the cart made enough to walk, I rented a corner in a warehouse and called it a roastery, because the drum I found was secondhand and loud and a steal. The seller swore it still held heat like a grudge. We leased a pallet jack for a week and bribed a friend from the salvage yard with pizza to maneuver it through a door that had opinions. The first time I roasted alone, the loft fans were not yet humming for me at night. I rented a room above a grocery where the air smelled like apples and dust. The drum's first crack popped, then the second, and suddenly I could hear the coffee breathing. I cupped a batch with a borrowed spoon and wrote Cocoa Cherry Pit Clean Finish in a ledger like a prayer. A small grocery on Kinnickinnick took a dozen bags as a favor. A cafe in Bayview took 20 as a bet. I stamped labels by hand until the muscles in my thumb had thoughts about unions, too. Did you ever talk to an actual broker? Charles asked, cutting a slice in mathematic angles. I did, I said. Ruth, she hates fluff. Lorraine laughed like fluff was a sin. At least someone checks your enthusiasm. Ruth drove me to raw spaces in old buildings that had been a foundry, a packaging plant, a place where nothing soft survived. She rapped knuckles on brick and said, "You want truth in a wall." She watched me measure sun. She watched me hold my breath around square footage like it could drown me. Then she slid a sheet across a coffee shop table and said, "This one won't hurt you." A loft with beams like Bones windows, like admission in HOA that wasn't a synonym for surveillance. I took the amortization schedule home like homework and didn't sleep until it was memorized. It wasn't simple math. The bank liked my ledger but loved my persistence. The credit union manager, Delgado, a woman who wore her hair like a decision, asked me to explain my worst week. I told her about the time a belt snapped on a Saturday when 6 wholesale orders waited in the cold. I called 3 friends. We rebuilt the tensioner with a part that didn't exactly belong, and I hand-delivered 12 pounds like they were newborns. We pay attention to people who keep showing up, Delgado said. The SBA microloan landed. Numbers moved from red to gray, then to black that didn't brag. Tessa posted a picture from a hotel in Austin white robe room service tray and captioned it, "Choosing soft where I can hashtag self-treat." Lorraine texted me the photo and wrote, "Isn't she glowing, as if glow were a currency and I had chosen not to trade in it?" Down payment, Charles asked now. Fork paused, like it had to hold the number for verification. 42.5, I said. The rest makes sense as long as I don't stop breathing. Lorraine squinted, not at the number, but at the certainty. It's so aggressive to lock this much up when Tessa is approaching transition. Adults transition all the time, I said. We call it living. Tessa flipped her hair with a wrist made for stages. You keep acting like I haven't worked, she said. I built an audience. You curated things, Lorraine corrected, affectionate and sharp. There's a difference. I stood and gathered plates, the domestic choreography that says I see you, while also buying a second to remember you can say no. The iPad screen went to sleep and threw my reflection back at me, tired, steady, not as fragile as someone hoped. The manila folder sighed when I moved it an inch. The paper inside held screenshots of calendar invites and shared docs and a draft that had my address in the wrong mouth. On the walk over, my cousin Priya had called to say she'd seen the folder name pop up in a family chat by accident. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, she offered gentle. Misunderstandings don't fill signature lines by themselves. Tell us about the roaster, Charles said, trying to rescue us all into a story with machines. It's loud, I bet. It's honest, I said. 15-kilo drum with old bolts and a new bearing because the old one screamed. I learned to listen to it the way you learn someone's morning voice. It gets testy if the humidity plays tricks, and it likes to pretend it's fine before it coughs. Tessa smirked. Wow, romantic. It isn't, I said. It's a job. Money talk turned my mother's palms up. We only want to make things smoother for you, she said, which was an odd way to spell rougher. When you put family on things, lenders see stability. That's common sense. Sometimes I said, and let the word sit where it could be read or ignored. The loft carried sound like a church. Somewhere someone turned on a radio. The building manager's pothos leaf had already decided to aim for the light. I thumbed a water ring off the island and stared at the mark it left, a temporary circle that would lift if you were patient. Lorraine watched my hand the way a person watches a teller count bills. Tessa set her phone down face up a mirror that didn't like truth. Do you remember the cart in February? Charles asked, half fond. He liked origin stories as long as they ended in compliance. You made cocoa for the McAllister's kids. The littlest one spilled it on the dog, I said. The dog didn't mind. People adored the scrappiness, Lorraine said. They liked the product, I said. Scrappy is what people call it when they don't want to pay for labor. Nobody argued, which felt like a small, quiet crack in a frozen lake. Ruth texted me a month before close and said bring a jacket to the walk through the HVAC lies in July. She was right. The vent coughed out air like a mouth rehearsing excuses. I wrote the number for a repairman in the margin of the inspection report and didn't flinch. The day I signed the desk where I pressed the pen smelled like metal and lemon. There was a bowl of individually wrapped candies I didn't take. The keys slid across to me and clinked against the paperwork, a tiny percussion section that meant begin. The pizza had cooled enough to be honest about its flaws. The crust was exactly as tough as a long day, and the cheese tugged back like someone pretending. Tessa reached for the last slice, as if the room owed it to her, and offered me a look that said she would be kind if I were correct. "It's a lot to hold," Lorraine said, surveying the beams, the windows, the life she kept trying to flatten. "We just don't want you to be alone with all of it." "I'm not," I said, and didn't add that being alone with what is mine has a different taste than being crowded by requests. I stacked plates. The island light hummed. The river moved whether or not we respected it. "Coffee in the morning," Charles said. "You'll make some." "I always do," I said. We cleared without ceremony. I tied the trash bag and pressed the knot tight, the sound a small, satisfying gasp. The mesh welcome basket sat under the window. Patient the magnet with the emergency numbers clinging properly to the fridge door. The pothos leaf found more light. I ran water until it turned cold and washed my hands until the day's roast left the air and the skin. The candle Lorraine had brought kept describing a life where nothing ever got dirty enough to prove it existed. I blew it out. The smoke made a ribbon and then was gone. Steam drifted off the sink in thin white ropes and vanished against the brick. The apartment took our shapes and then forgot them. That was one thing I liked about the loft, it didn't hold grudges. I set the plates to dry along the rail and wiped the island until the water rings gave up. The candle Lorraine had brought was a stub, now the wick a pin. "Let's do something fun," Tessa said, already reaching for the shelf. Her nails clicked on cardboard until she found a battered Yahtzee cup. Dice rattled like a warning. "We haven't played since we were kids." "We didn't play," I said. "You rolled and declared yourself an only child." Charles laughed, grateful for a game. Lorraine smoothed her jacket and let the room believe in normal. I dried my hands on a towel with an old brewery logo and watched the iPad pulse awake again. Mr. Reed patient as a porch light. Tessa shook the dice like she was warming them for mercy. They spilled in a tough little scatter. 2-5, she said. "We start with the easy wins." "Easy wins don't start with dice," Lorraine said pointedly. She slid an envelope from her tote and laid it by the Yahtzee pad. Not the manila folder I'd hidden, not yet. Something new. Occupancy addendum draft in sans serif neatness. I had Linda at the office pull a template. "We can fill it out after a few rounds. No pressure. It's practical." "I don't sign things in pencil," I said. "It's draft," Charles said, a peacemaker's reflex. "You know drafts, ohs. You roast test batches." "I taste test batches," I said. "I don't let them walk out of the building with my label on a hunch." Lorraine tilted the envelope as if the right angle could charm me. "It's 6 months. We've spoken to a friend who knows underwriting." "Who?" I said. "Ted," she said, as if first-name familiarity with a ghost would make him real. "He says co-occupancy reads well during a market like this. The IRS doesn't like empty space on paper. It starts questions. God forbid an audit lands on a cash-forward business." Charles winced, not at the word audit, but at the way it entered the room like a bat. Tessa looked up from the dice, interest waking like a cat. "That's the thing," she said. "We're trying to protect you from the way things look. Optics matter." "Optics are not law," I said. "Law follows optics more than you think." Lorraine's voice warmed to the confidence of rehearsed lines. "People with cash and unconventional income get flagged. We're trying to keep that from happening." "Sign this. Add Tessa as an occupant. Stability is what the IRS likes to see," Charles added. "And lenders because a chorus sounds better than a solo." I pulled the towel straight on the oven handle because something in me wanted a straight line. The iPad chimed without being rude. Mr. Reed lifted one finger, a teacher about to draw a timeline. I left him on mute and put the envelope back where Lorraine had set it, like it might burn the counter if I didn't honor the exact placement. "You're saying you're protecting me," I said. "We are," Lorraine said. "This is what protection looks like at our age. It's paperwork. It's being smart." "It's asking for a key," I said. Tessa rolled again. 3s clattered. She smiled at the cup like it recognized her. "It's asking for a name on a line that helps all of us. The building won't even notice. You heard the guy forms insurance, blah blah. The guy I said has a name and a badge. He noticed." Lorraine set both palms on the island nails, clear and square hands that liked important paper. "No is not a personality," she said, sweet as iodine. "Don't be dramatic. You've made so much from nothing. Don't throw it away by being stubborn about a signature." I slid the manila folder from under the cutting board until it kissed the envelope paper, meeting paper, like teeth. The weight steadied me. I didn't open it yet. I wanted the room to feel the gravity first. "Charades," Charles said too loudly. "Lord, we were good at charades." "You were good at clues that only you understood," I said, and angled the iPad toward my hip. I tapped the speaker icon. Mr. Reed's apartment bloomed in tiny, crisp lines, clean shelves, a plant that was not a pothos, a face without weather. "Hi," he said, voice a metronome. "I was asked to toast a housewarming. This looks like Yahtzee." Lorraine's smile snapped into host mode veneer, stalking her words. "We didn't realize we had counsel at supper." "You have a friend who happens to have a law license," he said. "I can be a witness too if that's useful." "It isn't," Lorraine said. "It might be," I said. Tessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. Everyone has a lawyer on Zoom in Milwaukee on a Tuesday." "Everyone has something," Mr. Reed said. "Some have dice." He was not the funny one in his family. I appreciated the try. I slid the folder open. Printed screenshots flared white against brick. Tessa Relocation Plan 2.0. A Google Calendar event that read, "Occupancy switch confirm." A Drive document named, "Request recipient, confirm transfer," with my address in the blank field. The times stamped themselves across the page in blue and gray. Underneath, a DocuSign draft already filled with my name, misspelled in one place Maya, but correct in the line that mattered. Charles stared at the pages like they were a puzzle box. Tessa went still, the way animals go still when they hope you will look away. Lorraine inhaled and turned the breath into a laugh. "You're being paranoid," she said. "Context, Maya. This is brainstorming. We didn't send anything." "You didn't send because you needed the key," I said. "You set it up. You made the ask sound like a casserole and hid the transfer under the foil." "We wouldn't move forward without you," Charles said, and meant it as a kindness. "That sentence is a confession," Mr. Reed said, mild as tea. "Let's all be careful with our verbs." Lorraine fixed her eyes on the lawyer in the metal slab of the iPad. "You can't just pop into a family dinner and intimidate people." "I don't have to," he said. "The documents are doing that for me." Tessa laughed, a brittle ping. "It's just a draft. Mom already said. We're not criminals. We're trying to be smart in a system that's built to be rude." Mr. Reed took off his glasses and cleaned them with a square of cloth that had never seen a pocket. "Here's what's true," he said. "Pressuring a property owner to sign an occupancy addendum under false pretenses is coercion. Drafting a transfer that uses their address to float credit optics is a kind of misrepresentation. Using threats about audits as leverage is harassment. If you have actual tax concerns, file them. Otherwise, do not hold tax ghosts over someone's head. Also, the building prohibits changes in occupancy without approval and updated insurance. You were just given the packet that explains it. A knock hit like punctuation." Kovac, the building manager, leaned in again, regret already in his voice. "Folks, hi. Sorry to be that guy. Noise complaint on the floor and back doors sticking. Maintenance needs the hallway clear for 10. "We're done with the loud part," I said. Kovac nodded and let his eyes find the papers, because papers find eyes. "Saw the magnet on the fridge. That's the emergency line. You're set." "Quick question," I said. "Occupancy changes, approval insurance, addendum with the office," he said, gentle and non-negotiable. "Tenants can't do side agreements, not even for a week. Liability. And trust me, our insurer has an appetite for reasons to cancel. Don't give them dessert." "See," Lorraine said, stretching for humor, finding gravel. "Everyone's just trying to do things right." "And we will," I said. When the door clicked, the room stayed in its knock shape for a second. Tessa rolled the dice like a fidget. They came up one's a clean lack. "Stop pretending this is war," she said. "It's a favor." "Favors don't arrive with templates," I said. "They don't use my address like a stepping stone." "You won't even notice," she said. "I'll keep my stuff neat. I'll help with." "I notice every invoice that has my name on it," I said. "I notice the hum of a machine when the belt wants to fail. I notice when a document puts me in a position I did not choose. That's why the business is alive." Lorraine dipped her head, recalculating. "You don't have to be cruel to be firm." "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm saying no." Charles found his father voice and set it on the table between us like a trophy. Family first, he said. We don't put paperwork above blood. Family first has usually meant me first in the checkout line, I said. It's meant I pay, and you call it tradition. Mr. Reed folded his hands. We can end the tug now, he said. Here's a sentence that will save everyone time. Communications on this topic go through counsel. That keeps things orderly. Lorraine scoffed. Are you threatening to sue your own family? No one said sue, he said. I said root. You brought documents. Papers require channels. Tessa's voice softened, switching instruments. Maya. I'm scared, she said, a tremor at the end built for microphones. The city is hard. You have what you need, and I'm in a transition. I don't want to be a story on the internet about a girl who fell through a crack. The internet isn't here, I said. We are. Honesty is more useful to safety than signatures I can't defend. Tessa blinked tears without letting them fall. Lorraine glared at me for not catching them. Charles touched the envelope like it might hatch. I put my palm on the manila folder, then lifted it and set it down beside the candle. Here's my clarity, I said. I'm not adding an occupant. I'm not signing a transfer. I'm not accepting threats dressed as advice. This is my address. These are my keys. I tapped the ceramic dish, silver, brass, the sound a small bell. If you need stability, get it without standing on my name. That's a fine speech, Lorraine said, exhausted not by me, but by not winning. If we were cruel, there are forms we could file that make your life unfun. Are you sure you want us to pick up pens? Now we're on record, Mr. Reed said, tone even. You've connected forms we could file to leverage for a signature. That's coercion. You can, of course, report anything you believe in good faith. I encourage it. But the timeline here matters. Don't talk to me about timelines, Lorraine snapped. I had children when I was 24. I've lived more lines than you write, and I cut the crusts off your grief. Charles said to her, which was neither coherent nor helpful. I'm tired, Tessa said. This is exhausting. You could be generous, but you're being literal. Generosity without consent is theft with nicer packaging, I said. She flinched like I'd thrown something, though the only things moving were breath and the flicker of a wick. The Yahtzee cup fell over in a slow little roll, and the dice went to the floor, pattering under the island like teeth. We were quiet for a while. Kovach's footsteps faded down the hall. Somewhere a dog barked twice and stopped satisfied. The river made its metal lullaby against the pilings. I wanted tonight to be simple, I said. You invited a lawyer, Lorraine said. I invited a witness, I said. Because last time I said no in this family, it turned into maybe, and then yes when I wasn't looking. Charles looked at the exposed beam above us, as if it could offer a compromise. We'll revisit it, he said. We won't, I said. Lorraine gathered the envelope with the delicacy of someone retrieving an heirloom from a careless child. She slid it into her tote and made a show of closing the zipper. Tessa knelt and reached for the dice under the island. When she stood, her eyes flashed grief, or something like it, and for a second she was 8 again and lost a bead bracelet by the lake. Then it was gone, and she was 27 and certain again. Fine, she said. Live in an echo and call it victory. It doesn't echo, I said. It tells the truth. Charles took his coat arms into sleeves with a practiced economy. He kissed the air near my temple and found nothing to land on. Lorraine pushed her chair in with care that sounded like disdain. Tessa snapped a last photo of herself with the river, her face a bright refusal. I didn't ask her to delete it. Kovach had propped the back door open. A colder seam of air drew across the floor. It smelled like rain, although the forecast had promised nothing. The iPad screen dimmed. Mr. Reed waited where good counsel waits. Thank you, I said to the glass, for your timing. I didn't do anything he said. You did. I folded napkins, I said. That's a kind of document, he said. When the door closed behind them, the loft shook the conversation out of its edges. I put the dice back in their cup and set the cup on the shelf. I stacked the plates we hadn't used. I slid the manila folder into the drawer where the utensils used to live in a different apartment, a different life. The Yahtzee pad sat on the island with 2 scores on it that meant nothing. An everything T with a line M with a line no numbers. I tore the page and laid it flat in the trash, then changed my mind and folded it small and folded it again until it was a white square with secrets and put it in my pocket like a stone. The candle had cooled into a puck. I pried it out with a butter knife and dropped it in the bin. The wick left a smudge on my fingertip that wouldn't wash with water alone. I scrubbed with dish soap until it lifted a gray ghost that finally learned to leave. The faucet hissed in relief. The loft knew how to hold quiet. I set the towel to dry, turned off the island light, and listened to the refrigerator hum. Do its work. The keys in the dish were heavy for their size and made a small, trustworthy sound when I touched them, like a promise that didn't have to be said out loud. Night pinned itself to the windows, a clean sheet. I rinsed the last glass and left it to dry with its siblings, clear mouths turned down like a row of rain bells. The keys in the dish had cooled. Metal does that when the room stops arguing. My phone lit the counter. 3 missed calls from Lorraine, 1 from Charles, 2 from a number with a city code but no name. A text from Priya heads up Tessa just posted. The link opened to a carousel Tessa in soft light chin lifted captioned, "Some of us are punished for asking for safe shelter. Housing justice begins at home." The next slide was a graphic in gentle fonts. "Help me land on my feet with a thermometer bar at $73. Comments stacked under it, hearts a few. "You got this," a handful of questions that had the shape of doubt. Someone asked if the building allowed additional occupants. Someone else asked where the money would go. I closed the app and set the phone face down. The screen still found a way to glow at the edges like a closed eye refusing sleep. I stood at the drawer, slid it open, and took out the manila folder. Paper made sense. It didn't beg for likes. The screenshots were still themselves unchanged by opinion timestamps file, names a draft with my address in the throat of a sentence. I set them back and locked the drawer with a small key I kept on the brass ring. When I turned the deadbolt on the front door, it made that true blunt sound I trusted. The loft held still. Morning arrived with the smell of rain anyway, forecast be damned. The roastery was warm by 6, the drum preheating the air hushed with the promise of noise. Lena knew higher, steady hands, hair pinned back with a pencil like a flag arrived early, and tied an apron in a square knot. "You slept," she said, like a person asking if the sun worked. "Enough," I said. We checked the pre-roast moisture on a lot from Huila and measured the day in grams. Lena learned the curve the way you learn someone's laugh. Where it lifts, where it wants to drop too soon. The bearing sang a little at minute 8. I tapped the housing, and it remembered its job. First crack went like popcorn from a church basement, shy and decisive. We pulled at 15-7, dumped the drums, stirred the beans with wooden paddles, until the steam settled into something that smelled like deciding well. A regular in a Carhartt beanie held the door with his boot and said, "You look lighter," which was how Midwest strangers say you survived a thing without demanding details. I poured him a cup and sliced a stray wobble off the feet of the front table with a folded business card. The table quit complaining. Between batches, I logged into accounts and turned keys only I could hold. The 3 bureaus put me on hold to music that wanted to be confident and ended up tired. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, each freeze performed like a lock clicking in a hallway. I added alerts to the bank that fed the roastery. Texts would land now if a charge tried to pretend. I opened the lender portal and set a pin with a word nobody could guess unless they'd watched me pick out stone granite. I told the portal to ask twice before anything moved. 2-factor codes came through on a separate device, a little rhythm of numerals that felt like proof. I printed confirmations on a quiet office printer, with a drum we coax along. Like an old dog, slipped each into a plastic sleeve and filed them in a binder with a spine I label myself. The binder went on the shelf beside the records and the fire extinguisher. Paper extinguisher, 1 for proof, 1 for error, both red. At 10, Mr. Reed walked in out of real rain, a neat umbrella dripping politely into a mat. He didn't take a stool. He set a stack of green cards on the counter, certified mail receipts, the kind you sign and send, and someone else signs and sends back. Cease and desist drafted sent, he said. Demand for retraction included. I attached the screenshots with timestamps. "We'll route communications through me." "Thank you," I said. "I'm copying you on everything he said. Not because you need to answer, because accuracy is kind." The green cards looked like tiny passports for words. I slid one with my finger. Ink bled through names and addresses and handwriting that tried to be casual and failed. The shop hummed, We bagged the first batch for the grocery on Kinnikinnick and stamped the labels by hand because machines lie when they're bored. Lena hit the stamp with a clean, efficient rhythm, up-down truth. My phone buzzed again. Lorraine's voice filled the voicemail box as if it paid rent there. I didn't sleep. This is giving me migraines. Your stubbornness makes me physically ill. If the IRS comes knocking, remember who warned you. Another message a beat later. Where the softness calcified, I raised you. I could make a call that makes you sorry for this. A text from Charles landed beneath it. Let's de-escalate. Loop me in with your attorney. We can phrase something neutral. His sentences wore ties. I answered none of it. An auto-reply to the family group text was already set. For housing occupancy matters, please contact Mr. Reed. It was one line plain. The phone quieted the way a dog quiets when it finally believes you mean stay. During the lull before the midday rush, Kovacs poked his head into the roastery like a neighbor cat beaded with rain. Heard the thunderheads, he said, and meant the weather and the week both. He glanced around the floor. No forbidden space heaters, no illegal extension cords playing daisy chain. You run a clean ship. I like knowing which thing sings when it's about to break, I said. Good policy. He tipped 2 fingers. We're doing a fire drill next week. Sign went up by the elevator. And if anyone asks you in the building chat about sublets or couch surfing, point them to the office. Keeps me from being the villain at parties. Understood, I said. He bought a bag of the new roast for his wife and left a 5 in the tip jar, like a person who knows money is a language and speaks it fluently. By noon, the rain let up. The roastery smelled like chocolate that had earned the right. We boxed 12 pounds for a cafe in Bayview. Lena taped the corners down so clean the seams disappeared. I wiped the counters and the counters agreed. We set timers for the last batch and stood a minute listening. The drum sighed its way to idle satisfied. In the afternoon, Priya came by with a roll of craft labels and a look that said she'd like to hold me by the shoulders and also let me be. Cousins are texting, she said. Half apologies, half recipes for how they'd have done it, none helpful. Thanks for the warning, I said. Tessa deleted the fundraiser Priya added. Left the story up for an hour, then it vanished. Comments got spicy when someone asked for receipts. She posted a boomerang of tea after, so we are switching to beverages as metaphors. I smiled because the alternative was biting a lid. I'm not posting. Don't, she said. Let the quiet be the statement. She labeled while I cooled the last batch. We worked like relatives who know that blood is not the only way to be related. By closing my inbox, held a reply from a lawyer with a surname that had golf in it. We represent Miss Tessa and Miss Lorraine in an informal capacity. Our clients deny any intent to harass. They ask for privacy and propose to let the waters settle. Mr. Reed had already answered with a paragraph that did not blink. A retraction is appropriate. Routing remains through counsel. Future contact with my client on this topic is disfavored. He attached again the calendar, the draft, the timestamps, the building rules Kovacs had printed on heavy paper. At home, the law felt less like a scene and more like a room again. I carried up a sack of groceries, eggs, basil in a little pot, a bread that admitted it was bread and not cake. The pothos perked when I set it near the window, the leaves already choosing a direction. I read the green cards Mr. Reed had left until I trusted their promise. Certified mail return receipt, and slid them under a magnet on the fridge the building had given me. The emergency number stared back from the magnet like a tidy chorus. The faucet sang briefly, the hum in the walls kept its tempo. My phone did not stay still. Lorraine had found her martyr voice again. My head, my heart, we were only trying to do what families do. Charles tried the boardroom tone. We all said heated things. No need to make records. Let's be sensible. Tessa sent a DM from an account with a different name and the same eyes. This city eats girls like me. Maybe you don't care. I didn't answer there either. I forwarded all 3 to Mr. Reed and put the phone in a drawer with the soy sauce packets and the extra batteries, a makeshift vault where buzzing sounds go to calm down. I watered the basil until the soil went dark and stopped drinking. I set a pan on the stove and listened to the first small answer of heat. Outside, the river carried rain that wasn't forecast and didn't ask permission. I opened one window by 2 inches because I could. The air came in and found a way to be good. The pan found its rhythm, first a low sizzle, nothing showy. I tore basil with my fingers, green under my nails, and folded it into eggs that set the way. Calm sets quiet all at once. I ate at the island with the window open 2 inches. The rain scent thinned into something clean. The keys in the ceramic dish looked small and certain. I washed the plate, leaned it to dry, and turned off the light. The hum in the walls took over. By morning, the river dragged the last of the storm toward the lake. At the roastery, the drum warmed without complaint. Lena dialed in a pour-over until it stopped arguing and poured 2 cups like she trusted the water. We packed an order for Kinnikinnick. The tape ran straight, no bubbles. Between labels, my inbox clicked a scan of a green card with a tidy signature. Delivered, signed. Another followed, then the third. Mr. Reed's email was a sentence that fit in a palm receipts logged. Routing stands. No ceremony, just paper behaving the way paper should. The day stayed practical. A guy with a paint-splattered hoodie bought a half-pound and told me his baby finally slept through the night. He looked like he'd been handed an extra hour. A retired teacher I knew by her scarf asked if the rain got in through the old windows, and without waiting for an answer, told me she used to fix drafts with rolled towels and stubbornness. Lena timed the next roast against the clock on the wall and the one in her hands. Both agreed. In the afternoon, Kovac crossed the loading dock with a clipboard tucked under his arm. "We're square on your file," he said, like a weather report. "Thanks for pointing folks to the office." He tapped the magnet he'd given me, the one with emergency numbers. "That thing solves half my headaches." "Glad to pay for the other half with coffee," I said. "Deal," he said, and left carrying a bag of beans for home. I kept my phone face down until the counters were wiped and the floor didn't squeak. When I checked, the fundraiser was gone. The soft font graphic had vanished like something written on condensation. A few cousins had texted in the family chat about recipes and football scores. I scrolled past without needing to enter the room. Priya sent a photo of her cat inside a loose roll of craft labels, eyes wide like he'd invented shelter. I sent back a period, the punctuation we use when we mean seen. At home, I set a postcard on the counter and wrote in block letters small enough to fit in a hand. No money, no threats, no triangulation. Meetings require truth. Truth requires consequence. I taped it to the inside of the front door low, where only I would see it when I reached for the knob. It looked like a rule card from a board game that finally learned the right rules. The loft softened on schedule. The pothos tipped toward the window as if coached. I rearranged the thrifted stools by an inch, and the room landed better. I shelved the binder with the green card copies beside the fire extinguisher and didn't touch either again. Friends came Sunday with Tupperware and jokes that didn't ask to be forgiven. We ate standing, then sitting, then leaning against brick like regular people who like each other. The balcony didn't brag. It held plates and elbows and a jar of cutlery. Steam rose off a bowl and drifted away. Priya washed dishes with her sleeves pushed up and refused to accept thanks like it was her job description. Someone asked about the roast curve, and Lena answered without looking at me for permission. The river threw back windows of light from the warehouses and then let them go. When the door closed on the last good night, the air went light again. Texts blinked on the phone, a line from Charles that sounded like minutes from a meeting, a quieter one from Lorraine that read, "We miss you at dinner," a burner account that didn't say its name. I forwarded each to Mr. Reed and put the phone away. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It had weight like a blanket you choose. I watered the basil until the soil went dark and the plant stopped asking. The postcard on the door held. The dish on the counter held the keys. The refrigerator hummed like a job finished well enough for today. The building settled into its old bones, and the river kept its appointment with distance. I turned the latch, checked it with my thumb, the way you check a word before you say it, and let the room be a room. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.